here on interviewing skills. If you wouldn't mind, go ahead and mute yourself so that we can speak clearly. If you have any questions, feel free to open the chat box, put the questions in, and we'll see if we can answer them live at the end of our presentations, the formal portion of the presentation. Today, we are going to talk about impromptu speaking and what do you do at an interview. We're going to discuss both the job interview for new jobs and also how do you interview with your current employer for a promotion or your annual performance appraisal. An authority on the subject of interviewing for new job is Verlyn Forde Drummond. She does this professionally. So at this time, I introduce to you Verlyn Forde Drummond to talk to you about the interviewing necessary for a new job. Verlyn, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. How's everyone doing today?
Good.
Awesome, awesome. And I'm so happy that you guys can join us here at 1:30 in the day. I thank you for your time. And I'm hoping to make this very, very interactive. I don't want to just sit here and toss things out at you. I want to definitely make it interactive. So I encourage you to please put questions in the chat as I go along, okay? And then I will address them at the end. All right. So again, my name is Verlyn Forde Drummond, and what I do for a living, what's my occupation? I'm a national recruitment manager for Maxim Healthcare Services. What my job is basically, it's all HR related from every aspect of it. So I do the interview process, I do the hiring, I do the credentialing, I cover payroll, and my staff is my staff. So which means if I hire you, you're one of my staff. So I am continuously doing the mundane duties of all of that for the rest of the time that you're in my employment. That is the reason why I feel a little bit confident in delivering interview skills workshop to you today. So again, want to make this really, really interactive. I'm going to spend some time very briefly talking about what you should do pre-interview. And we're going to spend the bulk of the time talking about the actual interview and a couple tips within that process, and then post-interview. Bulk of it is going to be what to do in the interview and how to answer interview questions. Okay? Are we good so far? Everybody on board?
Yes.
Awesome, awesome. Good to see all the smiling faces. All right, so you landed an interview. Amazing. What do you do? What are some of the pre-interview steps to follow? Quick thing about resume, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. Whether you do it yourself or you get it professionally done, there are lots of templates online to help you with that. There are lots of agencies that would help you do a resume. Make sure that your resume is specific to the job requirement. Never make a blanket resume. A lot of people do that. They'll have the resume just one thing and send it to every job that they apply for. So try really, really hard to always customize your resume to that specific job that you're applying for. Due diligence. I cannot stress this enough. I'll explain during the interview process why this is really, really key. Doing your due diligence on a company, making sure that you have questions to ask during the interview, making sure you've researched the company extremely well. Who's the CEO? How did the company get started? How did they get their start? Things like that. What's their mission? What's their vision? Looking at the job requirement. You're applying for a secretary, you're applying for a team manager, you're applying for sales, whatever the job is, make sure you have that job requirement and study it like your Bible, because that is the key to answering all of the questions during the interview. I'll explain that during the interview process. So you want to really, really review that job requirement in detail. Find out about charities that the company maybe donating to. Find out as much as you can about the company before the interview time comes along. You want to confirm the address just in case. A lot of companies have DBAs. I've seen this happen to a lot of people. So the company might have a DBA and their address for their corporate office might be in one location, but where you're going to the interview is in another. So you always want to run that back, whether it's by email or a phone call, and confirm the address. If it's nowadays, we're doing a lot of virtual interviews, so make sure that you have the link prior to the interview time. Make sure that the link is working. Troubleshoot all of those technological challenges that we all know can happen. Troubleshoot all of those, try to do that beforehand so that when the time rolls around for your interview, you are right there. All right, so we're having a little bit of distractions. Please just silence your phones. Thank you so much. So you want to confirm all of those things. You want to print, if it's an in-person interview, obviously, you want to print your resume and have references available. That shows that you're proactively thinking, okay? So that's all I really wanted to cover in the pre-interview stage, because I really want to spend the bulk of time talking about the interview process. Okay, so questions on that, drop them in the chat, and then we'll address them after. Okay, we're moving along. Everybody good? I need nods, I need thumbs up. Everybody clear on those things? All right, so we're moving along nicely. Okay, so it's the day of the interview. The day of the interview rolls along, and it's time. What's the first thing? I can tell you from experience, your attire is really, really key here. What do you wear? Seems like a simple thing, really, really simple thing, but it's really important. So I'm going to share my screen a little bit for you right now. I want to be sure that you're able to see it. Let me know, show of hands if you're seeing my screen. Okay, everybody can see that? Awesome. Okay, so that's one of the things I want to talk about. So there are professional, business professional attire, and then we also have business casual attire. For an interview, you really want to always try to dress professionally. Look at the female in the picture. Look at her very, very tasteful business suit. The fact that she has no cleavage showing, all those key things, really, really important. She's wearing smart, sensible shoes. She's not wearing stilettos. A lot of the time people walk into offices, come into our office for interviews, and they can barely walk. That is really, really, that's something that you should really spend some time to think about. A nice business professional suit, both male and female, that we can see here. The man is nicely dressed with his tie. That's really important. I really wanted to spend some time talking about that a little bit, okay? Because that piece is important, your attire, what you're wearing. Making sure. There are occasions that you will do the business, which is the second part of the slide that shows, but it's really important to always dress professionally. It's better to look professional and dress professional. Your hygiene. Hygiene is important. Making sure, and I know it's simple things, and I'm saying this, the reason I'm saying this, and everyone's grown that we're talking to, because there are lots of times people come into the office not with BO. Let's just say it as it is. They're coming in with bad body odor, or they reek of cigarettes. So the smoking part of it comes into play. You can actually smell the cigarette smoke. Nothing turns off a potential employer more than those things. Overwhelming perfumes, things like that. They may seem like simple things, but they're really important to making sure that you're paying attention to your hygiene. Punctuality is another key thing to focus on. Making sure that you arrive 15 minutes before your interview is set to start. Making sure that you're there, sitting, waiting in the room. And one more thing to really remember is that the interview process starts the second you walk into the door of that company. So don't think if you're standing or you're sitting out in the waiting area and you're on your phone and you're doing things or you're talking to a friend and you're just, your whole demeanor is that less of professionalism, that those things count. So you want to remember that the second you're walking into that company, that building, and you're walking in and you may speak to the receptionist and they offer you a seat to sit and wait until your allotted time, you want to remain composed, professional in that manner. Okay, so key thing to remember, put your phone away at this time. It's not a time to do that. So you're going to have your resume, your reference, your paper, your things, something to write things down, and then you're going to be ready for your interview. So we're here. It's the allotted time. You walk back from handshake and you're invited to sit. Posture. Keep that in mind. Your posture is very, very important. Your posture, making sure that you're sitting upright, back firm, and making sure that you're remaining, giving good eye contact. Ladies and gentlemen, we're Toastmasters. Toastmasters prepares us for these things. Body language is a key part of our Toastmasters fundamental training. So you want to make sure that your body language is that you're attentive, you're listening, and all of those visual signs that you are here, I'm ready for this, I'm bringing all my energy into this job, I really need this job. Because let me tell you, your energy is something that interviewers see, employers see that. A lot of the times people would walk into an interview and they're like this. Or even their tone of their voice, there's no energy and it's very monotone and it's just, nothing's coming. As a recruiter, I definitely try to warm up any potential client that comes into our office for an interview. So my questions will be very, very easy, trying to build rapport with you, trying to put you at ease right away. And I know it's easy to say not to be nervous, but your nervousness comes through. So you want to definitely take deep breaths and calm yourself, compose yourself, and make sure that your body language is one that represents and brings good energy to the interviewer. Very, very key. Remaining poised, professional, and building rapport. There's something that we recruiters like to call the 7-38-55 rule. Show of hands if you've heard about this rule. No one? Okay, all right. So the 7-38-55 rule is this. Really, really simple. It's 38, these are numbers, and 55 is a concept concerning communication of emotions. The rule states that 7% of the meaning is communicated through your spoken word. Only 7%. 38% through your tone of your voice. 38%, ladies and gentlemen, and 55% is your body language. So you see, 55 is body language. What I'm communicating to you right now, my body language is 55% of that is weighted on that. 38% is what my tone of voice is conveying and my message and the way I'm saying it and the energy I bring to it. But only 7% is the meaning. Isn't that interesting? I hope you find that interesting, but that is a rule that we use behind the scenes when we have people come through the door to interview. So language, make sure you're avoiding slangs and profanity. I mentioned before, as a recruiter, I always try to put you at ease. That's my job, to put you at ease, offer you a bottle of water. Would you like a drink of water? How's your day? How was it getting here? How was the transportation getting here? Things like that I would ask to put you at ease, but don't be fooled. Remain professional. So avoid the slangs, avoid profanity. Even the traffic was horrible. You can relay that in a way that you don't have to use profanity to say it. A lot of the times that's an easy one that people fall victim of. Stay away from politics and religion. No matter what. Stay away from those things. So some of those are some of the key things to remember. Now, in the interview process, you may have a panel or you may have one person interviewing you. Making sure that your eye contact, goes throughout the panel if it's a panel interviewing you. If you have Sarah, John, and James that are currently conducting the interview, and Sarah asks the question, make sure that you're responding to Sarah, John, and James by eye contact. Remember that 7:38:55. So making sure that you're spanning the panel when you respond, because they all want to know your answer, not just Sarah. Key things. So we're in the bulk of the interview now. So we're getting into the nitty-gritty. A lot of the times, recruiters like myself ask situational or behavioral questions. They're both the same thing, same meaning. Situational questions or behavioral questions. You know, the ones that start, tell me about a time. Those questions. Yes. Here's the reason why we ask that. We want to know about your emotional intelligence. Situational and behavioral questions delve into how candidates handle past situations. And it allows us to learn about you and your ability to perform in a situation, and how you will handle crucial information. And it gives us insight into how you would react in a specific circumstance. And it just really helps us gauge your emotional intelligence and your ability to grow and improve yourself. So that's the reason why behavioral and situational questions are asked. So you can imagine you need to practice a lot of those. And remember in the pre-interview stages when I said to delve in, look at the job requirements, and really do your due diligence about a company, because you're using all of that information that you found out about the company to customize your answer when you answer those situational questions or behavioral questions. That's how you will never, ever fail an interview, because you are specifically going to insert yourself, your behavior, your skill set, all of those things right into the job requirements, into the culture, into the mission, into the vision, into all of those things about the company. That's a win-win. You're going to be exactly what they're looking for when you answer those questions. So those are really, really key. The method, the situational or behavioral question is what's called a STAR method. It's a structured manner of responding to a behavioral-based interview question by discussing the STAR. And the STAR is an acronym. It means situation, task, action, result. Situation and task obviously could be the same thing, because it's the situation, this was the situation, here's the task, this is what I did, so they can be used simultaneously, means the same. The action is what's key, but you will spend a lot of the time talking about your action, but your result, that's what we're looking for. What was the result of this? Did you grow? Did you learn? How did you overcome? Your result is what we're looking for. That's one of the key things. Sometimes we'll ask, tell me about yourself. As Toastmasters, ladies and gentlemen, this one should really be easy for you guys because it's an icebreaker. But when we ask, tell me about yourself, we are not asking you to tell me about, well, I finished school and I married Jolynn and I have 4 kids. We don't care. Well, when we ask, tell me about yourself, tell us about who you are and how who you are has led you up to this moment to why you're in this office interviewing for the job. So all of the answers to that question should align again with the mission, vision, core, job requirement. Making sure your answer always lines up with those things is a guaranteed way to answer that question successfully. What you're passionate about. Make sure those things align with what the core values of that company is. If they're passionate about making sure that the world is a better place, so there might be environmentally friendly, making sure that when you answer, you include some of those things. So you showcase your talent, your skill, and how you align well with that company. Does that make sense so far? Everybody following me? All right, let's see if we have anything in the chat. Have you guys added anything? Any questions so far?
We do have some questions.
Oh, all right.
If it's not in the job description, how do you ask about the pay?
Uh-huh. The infamous pay question. All right. So I say this when you have the pay question to ask. There's a couple ways to find out about the pay question if you don't want to ask. I never like to give answers to this because every interview situation is not the same. Your comfort level might be different. You may meet someone like me who is, I'm answering this question, but I'm going to give you a situation. For instance, if I interview alone, I'm a very different interviewer than when I interview with my director. We play good cop, bad cop. So we tag team. So it depends on the comfort level and what's going on, the ambiance of the room, so to speak. So read the room. If it's a time that you can ask a question on salary, leave it to the end to ask. Don't ask in the beginning. Leave it to the end to ask. If not, there's a couple ways that you can do it. Google has the answers for everything right now. So you literally, there's spacescale.com. There are several different ways that you can Google the answer, see what the pay equates to for the position that you're hiring for in the area. So you always want to put that in. So on PayScale, it will give you the city and state you are, because obviously the pay would relate to where you are, the location of it, the job that you're looking for, and PayScale will give you an idea of that if it's not a comfortable situation to ask. But if you are going to ask, then you definitely want to ask towards the end. You want to ask things like, what are the next steps from here? And what's the pay scale? You want to make sure you're balancing out how you're asking that question, that you're not just coming out and asking it early on, because it would turn off an interviewer right away. I hope that answers your question.
Next, is there any difference in the way you dress if you've only got a virtual meeting or a virtual interview?
That's an excellent question. And I'm glad that you asked that. And I'm glad somebody asked that, because that's something I definitely wanted to cover. Clearly, this is a virtual presentation right now, right? And I'm a recruiter, and I conduct a lot of these virtually now because of our current COVID-19, and a lot of people are staying safely at home, as they should. So the question is, would you dress the same whether it's in person versus virtual? The answer is yes. You're absolutely going to dress same in a business attire. I'm wearing a jacket for this interview. Obviously, I am still working at home, but I'm conducting interviews every day. So I get up in the morning, I walk, and I get dressed. If I don't have virtual interviews for the day, of course I'm in my PJs and I'm working at home. But when you're in front of the camera and you're showcasing yourself, you give the appearance the very same way as if you're in person. So you would dress professionally. And keep in mind, in Zoom, a lot of the times people think that they can wear something that's low cut or cut off without sleeves because they're not seeing. So keep in mind, people can pin your screen so they will see the entire square of you. So be mindful of that, and you always dress professionally and conduct yourself in a professional manner, whether in person or virtual. I hope that answers your question.
Another question, somebody would like the source information for your 738-55 scenario.
Okay, that is a very good question. In recruiter training, I was taught that, and that's a very good question because I never asked the source of it. But if you Google it, you would find it online. I can look that up, but I don't currently have the source, but I know it's something that we were specifically trained to look at, 738-55, when we do interviews and base it. Because just think about it. When we conduct an interview, there's a scale, there's metrics, a scorecard behind how you answer, and we weigh those things. Stands to reason that there will be a guide or some kind of rule behind it.
Is there a consistent source to find a company's mission, vision, and core values?
That's also an excellent question. So go straight to the source, go straight to the company. But any company would give you their best foot. It's almost like the same as a date. You're dating someone, they'll tell you all the good things about them. But to dig, you can look through to find out information that they might not want to share. There are other sites that you can research. There's glassdoor.com that gives you the good, the bad, and ugly about a company. There's shalliworkforyou.com. So there are a lot of ways that you can research a company and find out unbiased information about them. And then obviously you go straight to the source in order to find. So you would look, most companies on the header, tell me about us, would have about us, the home, about our story, where did we start? And it depends on if it's a big company that's throughout many states versus a small mom and pop place, depending on where you're hiring, that information would vary. But usually the source of the information, the company would have all the info that you need. But those are really good questions.
When I'm asked a question, about how long should the answer be without losing the questioner?
Oh my gosh, I love that question. I love that question because a lot of the times people would answer, and I kid you not, I struggle to stay focused because you've lost me. You've lost me. So obviously it would depend on the question that they ask you, but try to limit your answers. Just try to limit it should not go longer than a minute. They should not go longer than a minute because it depends on, again, it depends on the situation and the specific question that they ask you and how you're tying it in and how engaging and how much vocal variety that you're putting into the answer for the question. Because a lot of times if you're telling, well, when I was 7, and I did this and I knew right away at 7 that I wanted to go into nursing school because my friend cut herself on her finger and I'm gone. Because so it depends. So there's not a tailored answer for that, but make sure that you keep your answer engaging. Make sure you keep that vocal variety and that energy up, and make sure your answer pertains to exactly what the interviewer is asking. And if you're not sure, ask for clarifications. I cannot tell you how many times people don't ask for clarifications and they answer the question and what are you talking about? Ask. No, don't ask that way, but it loses us very, very much so. So always ask for clarification. If you're not sure, could you explain exactly what you're trying to ask me? Or can you ask me that again? Or ask the question another way to confirm. Are you asking me to tell you about a time that I overcame a challenge? And if you're still not sure, are you asking me about a time that I overcame a challenge as it pertains to a leadership role? That's the clarification that you need to ask. So that way you are sure of the answer that you're going to deliver, that it relates and aligns with the question. But keep your answers brief.
As the interviewer, what do you think about an interviewee that keeps his video off or is dressed too casual for the interview?
Okay, so let me see if I can see the question in the chat.
From Christine, yes.
Read it again for me, please.
I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah, please.
What do you conclude as the interviewer from an interviewee that either is not dressed or is dressed casually, or one that has his video off while being interviewed?
Okay, well, that's a sort of a two-part question. If they're coming into the office and they're not appropriately dressed, that interview would be very brief. And if I'm doing the interview with my director as a recruiter, and we will make that eye contact, and we already know that this is a no. So we'll go through short formalities with you, keeping it very brief because we've already made our decision. If you're not appropriately dressed, that's something that my boss has a zero tolerance for. If you're on a virtual interview and you're not properly dressed, it depends. Was this interview just thrown on you? Did we just 5 minutes ago say, hey, are you available for this? If it was a predetermined time and set and you had ample amount of time to be prepared for it and you're not dressed appropriately, then of course the repercussions will be the same. Because these things are really, really important. And again, it depends on the company that you're going to work for. Because let's say if you're working for Mario's Pizza, perhaps they won't care how you're dressed. I'm not sure. I can't answer that. But appearance is really, really key. Because one of the things to take away is that you are representing a company when you, with how you dress, what comes out of your mouth, your work ethics, and all of those things. One of the things in my first day instructions that I send out to any of my travelers going on into any hospital, any correctional facility, anyone, I always remind them, keep in mind, you are representing yourself, you're representing me, and you're representing my company. So keep that in mind in how you conduct yourself, what your attire looks like. So those things are really, really key, and we do not take those things lightly. So I'd advise you, no matter the situation, to always dress appropriately for whether it's an in-person or a virtual interview. Present yourself well.
Go ahead and ask the question, Christine.
Thank you. So, Verlyn, the situation was an interview that had been set up a week before. I was dressed professionally because I was the one interviewing for the position. It was a virtual interview, and the interview panel, the facilitator for the interview did not have video on. He was like the people here, you know, the black box with just the name.
Got you.
And
okay.
The other 3 people were dressed Saturday casual.
Okay.
So I was wondering, I felt fine. I felt appropriate. I was wondering why they were so inappropriate, and what conclusion might I come to as the potential employee? Thanks.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, that's very, very different. That's very, very different indeed. Okay. So again, you cannot have custom answers for situations like these because obviously every company is very different. When we conduct interviews, this is how we're asked to dress because again, we're representing the company and we want to also give our best foot forward. We want to give our best impression of our company and making sure that we stand for something. I don't know the company that you were interviewing for. And what I think about having a black screen and not seeing a face, I don't think that's very fair to the person. Can they do it? It's their prerogative. It's their company. Keep in mind, they already have a job and you're trying to apply for one. So I don't think it's fair to an interview, and I try my best to not do that because again, I'm in the habit of always making my interviewee feel very, very comfortable as the interviewer. I want them to have that comfort level to understand because it's a two-way stream when you interview. Another thing that I always stress to my travelers when they have to, because they'll interview for me to make sure they can work with the company, and oftentimes they'll have a secondary interview with the hospital or the administrator of that hospital. And I say it's a two-way stream. Ask as much pertinent questions as you can because you're the one going to the facility. So for you, in your instance, I don't know why they were dressed as relaxed as they were. I cannot speak to that, but that's just very, very different. And I don't think it's fair to have a black screen and have someone talk to a black screen. That isn't fair at all. Just my opinion on this.
Some of that though, and that is not everybody interviewing for a position, or not all the interviewers are professional at interviewing. If my job is to pump computer code, am I going to dress up to interview a candidate to pump computer code?
And that's valid because you would hear that at Google. Google has a very relaxed culture. And a lot of the internet startup companies have that relaxed culture. So again, that's why it's specific. It depends on the company that you're interviewing for. And try to get that prior to the interview also. What's the dress code for this? If it's not a professional company, how shall I dress?
Is there a uniform required?
Yeah. Things like that.
Verlyn, I do thank you very much. I'd like to go on to the next portion of this talk, and that is, you've got a job. And you need to either ask for a promotion or it is time for your annual performance appraisal. And you have a dialogue that you're going to encounter with this in mind. The dialogue is with somebody that knows you in many cases, but how do you answer that? How do you discuss promotional or annual performance appraisal questions? And I'm saying that they're both the same. This is your opportunity to talk about yourself with somebody that they think they know who you are, but you don't know for sure whether they have the correct image of you, nor do they know for sure what you have in mind for your future. So therefore, your impromptu speech or impromptu discussion with these individuals at the place you work is important, every bit as important as that initial job interview. And preparing for it is of the utmost importance. I even suggest taking a sheet of paper and working on a worksheet. The worksheet to talk to yourself first before you have to talk to your supervisor. The best answers are those that you say, I should have said that. And therefore, what you want to do is you want to say what you're going to say and then look at it to see if you have something you should change about it. That is important to understand. Those questions that you ask yourself are the questions you would expect them to ask you that you want to really be prepared. Keep in mind, nobody wants to listen to you brag. So you have to be able to brag with humility. You have to be able to explain how great you are, but without sounding like you're full of yourself. Again, as Verlyn said, dress is important. Even if the person interviewing you does not recognize that you're dressed, wearing that dressed appearance does make you that much more professional in your own mind, which should give you little additional confidence going forward with asking for that promotion. Be prepared to answer a few questions. What are you going to be doing 5 years from now? Have you prepared somebody to replace you? What type of a leader are you? Are you looking for a leadership position? Are you bureaucratic or incentivizing or just instructional? These different styles of leadership might be important for what company you're going to be applying for or what type of job you're going to be looking for. And don't forget to include, because the supervisor seldom understands, what do you do outside your company to improve yourself? And the least heard of is the improvement made by people in Toastmasters. That is a job skill worthy of note that seldom is understood by the supervisor until you actually bring up the subject. If you are interviewing somebody that understands that you've been working there and you've had some failures or you've had some difficulties, make sure you don't ignore them. But if you can, tell the supervisor what you have learned from that failure, what you can do better next time, or what you have observed that can be improved. Make sure that you note where you have helped others improve their skill set, or make sure that you talk about your successes. I worked for the state of Florida. It seemed like every job, a performance appraisal, was where the supervisor had to identify what you did wrong. And if you did anything right, you were responsible for that. You had to put that in the appraisal yourself. And don't be wishy-washy about it. Verlyn gave you some guidelines as far as making sure that you have the situation, task, action, and results, and put them in terms that the supervisor understands and knows. It is important to follow through with what you're saying with sufficient information so that your supervisor or whoever you're interviewing with has something they can put in writing that they can pass on. It is very valuable to ask questions. Ask if you're wanting a position, is this a new position or is it an upgraded position? And how big is the team you'll be joining? Are there any members on the team that are in charge? And what do they think about new members coming to the team? How does your supervisor feel you would fit in their team? What is the primary work you would be doing for that new position you're trying for? It is important to follow all these things with ideas in terms that the supervisor can understand. If you want to ace the interview, get the information out there. Make sure that you identify your characteristics and quality. Make sure that you let the supervisor know that you have the integrity necessary for the job. You respect the job, you have service and loyalty to the company, and you are persistent and accurate in your actions. Also, make sure that you give verifiable information like what size of a team have you been on? Or have you done all of your work as an individual without having any team interaction? Have you had to live under budget constraints? Some companies care about that. Lawyers are constantly looking for billable hours. Or in some cases, state employees have to justify their work according to the state budget. If you are going for the performance appraisal, make sure you listen carefully. If you're a Toastmaster, you should know how to listen. And after you finish listening, recognize the compliments given to you. Recognize the critique as the need for improvement, not as a put down. And recognize that you show appreciation. That supervisor reviewing you does not want to be reviewing you. That is not their primary function. If they're going to take time from their work to give you a performance appraisal, make sure you appreciate the time they spend with you and the time they listen to you. is also valuable to note any self-improvement, both on the job and also work-related self-improvement, such as what have you been reading and what have you been studying. Also, how have you built communication and leadership, team building on the job? You should note any formal or informal education. Go ahead and list the nonfiction books you've been reading. Also look at any adult education or college classes you have reviewed, studied, or plan to attend to see if they might want you to attend that or even pay for you to attend that. List any community involvement. Did you help build houses for Habitat? Make sure you mention that. Mention any voluntary work you did, whether that be Toastmasters, Rotary, Lions, any of the other organizations, or even your church organization. Did you volunteer at the church? It is not that important that you identify those, but if you identify them, make sure you're willing to support them by saying what you did and what you've learned from that experience. Talk about the job you did, not just the name of the job. If you say, oh, I'm a Toastmaster, it's probably better to say, I practice communication and listening skills at a weekly Toastmaster meeting. I set goals and communicate those goals to the team leaders. Doesn't that sound better? That will allow them to get a better picture of what you're doing as a Toastmaster. Or even better yet, I'm the club president. Or would you rather say, I'm a team leader. I have a 7 executive member team, and I work on a small budget to help improve leadership of all the members of my group. Even a secretary. No, I am the administrative assistant for a team of 7 executives. That sounds like you're important. And it is putting in terms that the supervisor might understand if that supervisor is not a Toastmaster. A VPE, Vice President of Education. And try and stay away from the acronyms unless it's a common acronym to everybody. The VPE, or Vice President of Education. I am a training supervisor, building more confident members and ensuring individuals get recognition for their accomplishments and goals. That's the way you're really doing. As Vice President of Membership, I'm a supervisor for new member orientation and mentorship. A Vice President of Public Relations. I am the Public Relations Officer responsible for social media news releases. I also act as technology trainer for new members. The treasurer is not a treasurer. He is the chief financial officer responsible for fiduciary concerns with a small budget, maintaining the 501c3 status of my organization. Important to understand that that's what you're really doing, and that's putting in terms. Okay, so you're only the sergeant at arms. No, you're the facilities manager, preparing, setting up, and storing materials needed for professional flow of all meetings. That's what you want to say, and that's the important part that you want to cover. If you're going to talk, make sure that you keep your conversation brief, because it is important for that supervisor to be able to follow exactly what you're saying. A 1 to 2 minute speech is about all that you're going to have the opportunity to give for each subject you're going to talk about until the questions are asked. It is very valid to do all of this in a short term, in a professional manner. Remember, talk about yourself proudly, but be humble enough to accept whatever comments that they have. Is there any questions about what do you do for a post-interview or a performance appraisal interview? I know that some of you people are currently employed, but even if you're not, these same questions that you would have on a worksheet that you work up are valid. If you want, I can share my worksheet with you so that you can have a starting point, but you know what companies you're going to apply to, and you should know whether those companies are going to want to hear from you. Something as simple as, tell me about yourself. See if you can do that in 3 lines. Have you ever been reprimanded or had to reprimand an employee? How did you deal with the emotions of that reprimand? Things like this are important for you to think about before going into the interview. I will work with Robin to put this on the Google Drive for District 48, my version of this worksheet, and will gladly answer any questions. My email is under my picture, so I can answer them either by email. If you are not currently a Toastmaster, and I believe everybody here is, but if you're not currently a Toastmaster, consider going to a Toastmaster and try your answers out on a Toastmaster environment. Try your listening skills and your ability to follow through with what they are asking so that you can listen and give proper feedback. Now, I started this project a few years ago in District 47 while I was part of a corporate task force where we were covering a 3-day seminar on employment, promotion, and interview. This set me in good standing for being able to get the number of jobs that I've got over my years. Now that I'm retired, I don't look for jobs anymore. So therefore, I am enjoying my retirement and understanding those people that need to follow through with their desire to eventually become retired and have a retirement plan worked out so that they don't have to work in their retirement. Are there any questions at this time? We still have another 4 or 5 minutes. Real quickly, let me give an example. If I was asked, tell me about yourself, I simply state, I am a retired tax auditor who has previously been a hotel manager and computer programmer. I enjoy solving problems and work with others to make sure that the workload gets evenly distributed and works well so that nobody feels like they're left out of the process. Is that brief enough? Does that sound like you want to have me with you What value do you bring to this job? Easy question, but unless you think about it in advance, you won't be able to answer that question. What value do you bring? I have perseverance. I find solutions for problems where the problems have not been encountered before. I deal with people and situations where technology may help, but people are the real answer. And I bring an understanding of people to this job. Do you see what I'm saying? I don't know that I would have been able to answer that prior to Toastmasters. Work on your answers and make sure that people understand exactly what you want and where you're going. It is important for you to understand, what do you want from this job and from your future? If you are working for a job interview, or if you're working for a promotion, or even or annual performance appraisal, make your answers clear, professional, and utilize the correct language so that the person interviewing you has understanding. Above all, make sure that you thank the person that is interviewing you, because that is not necessarily their primary function. And by thanking them, you're recognizing that they took the time off from their normal work to listen to you and for you to give them what they might need. Christine, you have a question. I see Christine's hand raised still. Or was that from a previous question?
That could be from a previous question. Jim?
No, I don't.
Oh, sorry, Christine, go ahead. You just unmuted.
Yeah, no, I don't have a question.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Jim, there is a question in the chat box, but would you let everybody know the link to the Google Drive? Did you answer that already?
No, I haven't answered that because I don't know the link right off the top. It's a District 48 a Google Drive, I believe, but I was going to pass it to Robin to post on the Google Drive.
I will take a look.
If that's okay with you, Robin.
I will take a look at it. So
It's a 2-page Word document.
And then we have everybody's email address from their registration, so we can share that as we can.
Verlyn, I thank you very much for your assistance on this and your expertise.
I just wanted to wrap up quickly because my segment did get away from me a little bit, and it allowed me to check into work a little bit. But I wanted to wrap up with the post-interview to make sure that a couple things post-interview. So just to jump back in, guys, so make sure you're asking questions about a typical day, making sure you're asking questions about a typical week to sort of gauge the culture of the organization. Make sure you take business cards. If it's a panel versus an individual, you make sure you take both or all of the interviewers' business cards. You end with a firm handshake, you thank them, and most importantly, you follow up with a thank you email. Thank you email. You refer and address the individuals by name, which is why you had the business cards. That's really key. And then you, again, tie in your relevant experience to, based on the interview and all the things you learn, you tie in how you would be an asset to them. So that's really, really key. So, and then it's always okay to follow up every 48 to 72 hours until you get an answer. Really key. I always want to say that. And it's okay to ask, how was the interview? Again, gauging the room, reading the room, and ask the question.
And asking how was the interview works for both, whether it's a new job or a promotional job. If you did not get the promotion or if you did not get the job, sometimes how did I do on the interview gives you the best clues as to what to do next time or how to improve yourself for your next job interview or next promotion interview.
Exactly. As Toastmasters, we're all about the feedback.
Are there any further questions? I see that our time is up. I appreciate all of you for taking the time out of your busy middle of the day work week. And I return control of this meeting over to all of you to go out and get that job.
Good luck.
Bye-bye.